Ready for a deep dive? We're going to be unpacking the life and mysterious disappearance of Amelia Earhart.
Oh, absolutely fascinating story.
Yeah. And we're digging into, well, a couple of different sources. We've got excerpts from Earhart's Wikipedia page, and then a really interesting article. It's a 2000 article from Naval History magazine
Okay.
called The Earhart Tragedy. Old mystery, new hypothesis.
Wow. Okay.
So listeners probably already know about the mystery, right, surrounding her last flight.
Right.
But we're going beyond that. We're going to explore what made Amelia such an icon and why her story still resonates with us, almost a century later.
And she is fascinating. I mean, we're talking about a woman who was really pushing boundaries.
Yeah.
In the 1920s and 30s.
Absolutely.
When, women's roles were much more confined than they are today.
Right. It was a totally different time. It was expected for women to focus on domestic life.
Yeah.
Getting married, having children. But Amelia, not so much.
No.
She just kind of zipped past those expectations.
Yeah.
And in her bright yellow Kissel Speedster, by the way.
Oh, I love that.
Which was nicknamed, are you ready for this? The Yellow Peril. Even her car had this kind of daring personality.
I love that. Yeah, it makes you wonder, was that a daring streak she was born with?
Right.
Or is it something that kind of, came about?
Yeah, how did she get to be that way? Was it nature? Was it nurture?
Right.
Right. I mean, there's that great anecdote, I love this one, about young Amelia building a ramp in her backyard.
Oh, yeah.
Just to experience that thrill of a roller coaster, but homemade.
Yeah.
And so she's using a broken box, and she goes down this makeshift roller coaster and has this rough landing, bruised but undeterred, she declares, and I love this, she's like, it's just like flying.
I love that. Isn't that interesting?
It's such a great anecdote.
Yeah.
Because it makes you think about those moments in childhood where we unknowingly step onto a path that shapes our future.
It's true. It's true. Who would have thought?
Who would have thought?
A broken box equals this amazing life of adventure.
Exactly, yeah. A broken box and a bruised ego.
Right.
Foreshadowing this amazing, adventurous life. It's really kind of incredible to think about.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a twist for you, though.
Okay.
Amelia wasn't always head over heels for airplanes.
Really?
Her first encounter with one at the Iowa State Fair, she found it kind of dull.
Interesting.
Compared to the excitement of the merry-go-round. I get it.
Yeah.
Sometimes we don't know. Sometimes our passions, they kind of, sneak up on us.
Right, exactly. It's a great example, right?
Yeah.
Your first impressions don't always reflect those deeper passions.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And she even described the plane, as a thing of rusty wire and wood and not at all interesting.
Yay, really?
Wow.
So not love at first sight?
No, it wasn't until a few years later at an air show in Toronto that it really clicked for her.
Yeah, and what happened there?
So picture this.
Okay.
Pilot kind of playfully swoops down towards the crowd. And Amelia is standing there in her spectator clothes.
Yeah.
And suddenly it clicks.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That thrill, that sense of freedom, it finally resonated with her.
That's so cool. So she was hooked after that.
Oh, yeah. There was no looking back for Amelia.
Wow.
Yeah, she was hooked. She even, sold off personal belongings.
Oh, wow.
Just to afford her first plane? That takes serious dedication.
Yeah, it wasn't cheap to be a pilot back then either.
No, definitely not. And it wasn't all, smooth sailing from there.
Right, of course not.
I mean, she faced setbacks, personal, professional. There was a failed sinus surgery, loss of expected inheritance. I mean, talk about challenges, right?
Yeah.
But each time, she just found a way to bounce back.
Really?
Started a photography business, worked as a social worker for a time, but all the while, she kept that dream of flying alive.
Oh.
Right? It speaks volumes about her resilience, I think.
Absolutely, yeah. So this brings us to 1928, when Amelia's life takes a very big turn.
Yeah.
This is when she becomes the first woman to cross the Atlantic in an airplane. Now, she was a passenger on that flight.
Okay.
But even feeling like baggage, as she put it, even that fueled her ambition to one day make the journey solo.
Wow. And what an ambition that was, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you think about the context of the time.
Sure.
This is a time when women were still fighting for basic rights, like the right to vote.
Absolutely.
And here's Amelia making this transatlantic flight. Captured the world's attention.
Yeah, it was huge news.
It was huge news.
Huge news.
And it really challenged those prevailing notions of what women could achieve.
Right.
Not just in aviation, but in any field.
Right, like if they can do this, what else can they do?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, she used it, too. She used that platform.
To her credit.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
To advocate for women in aviation and beyond. I mean, she wasn't just breaking records. She was breaking barriers.
Totally, yeah. She was a trailblazer in the truest sense.
Absolutely. And she did it all with this quiet confidence
Yeah.
and this fierce determination
Mm-hmm.
that really resonated with people,
It did.
worldwide.
Yeah.
It's no wonder she became this international icon.
Yeah, I mean, people were just, I don't know, they were enamored with her and her story.
Absolutely.
And rightfully so, I think.
Rightfully so.
And, she wasn't content with just crossing the Atlantic. Like, that wasn't enough.
Oh, no, not even close.
In 1932, she decides to fly solo across the same ocean.
I mean, talk about a pivotal moment,
Yeah.
right? Not just for Amelia, but for how the world saw women in aviation.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, just picture it. The sheer determination
Right.
to pilot that plane alone, battling icy conditions,
Yeah.
mechanical issues
I can't even imagine.
for almost 15 hours straight.
Wow.
And she lands, get this, in a pasture in Northern Ireland.
What?
A pasture.
Oh, my God.
And so a farmhand comes up to her, right, and asks, "Have you flown far?" And her response, "So cool, from America."
Stop.
Yeah.
I love that.
I know.
That's amazing. What a rock star.
Total rock star.
So that flight, I mean, that cements her place in history.
Oh, absolutely.
But it also fueled her ambition to take on even bigger challenges.
Yeah.
Right?
And that brings us to her most ambitious goal yet.
Okay, here we go.
The 1937 around-the-world flight. I mean, this was a journey unlike anything attempted before.
Really?
She was planning to cover 29,000 miles, mostly along the equator,
Oh, wow.
in this state-of-the-art Lockheed Electra.
Oh, wow. So, I mean, the excitement surrounding this flight must have been, I can't even imagine. Like, people must have just been, oh, my God.
Oh, it was off the charts.
Yeah.
Newspapers were covering every detail,
Oh, yeah.
sponsors, everybody wanted to be involved.
Of course.
It was a media frenzy on a global scale.
I bet, yeah. Amelia in this plane.
And it wasn't just, the spectacle of it all.
Uh-huh.
It really captured the world's imagination because Amelia, she saw this as an opportunity, yes, to make history,
Of course.
but to document it
Oh, interesting. Okay.
for the world to see.
So she was sending back journal entries during the flight?
Sending back journal entries,
Hmm.
doing interviews along the way. She planned to write a book about the whole experience. I mean, she really understood the power of her platform
Yeah.
and the impact it could have on others, particularly women.
Yeah. Wow, she was such a visionary.
Absolutely.
But as we all know, this incredible journey, it was tragically cut short, right?
Right.
And that's where the intrigue, I think, really begins.
Yeah.
So what do we know about the final days of that flight, and what makes this such an enduring mystery all these years later?
Well, for starters, the first attempt at this around-the-world trip
Right.
had to be abandoned in Hawaii
Oh, yeah, that's right.
due to, some technical difficulties. They actually had a crash during takeoff.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Was she hurt?
It didn't say,
Yeah.
but it was a pretty significant setback.
Yeah, bet.
But I mean, talk about determination. Nothing could dampen Amelia's spirit.
She was like, I'm doing this. It's almost like those setbacks, they just fueled her resolve, like, I'm going to prove everybody wrong.
Exactly. And that's what they did. They repaired the Electra,
Okay.
adjusted the flight plan, and they set off again, eventually making their way to Lae, New Guinea,
Okay.
their last stop before the most challenging leg of the journey.
I bet, yeah. So this is where that tiny speck of land in the Pacific comes into play.
Right, Howland Island.
Howland Island, yeah. And even with modern navigation, it's a difficult place to find.
It is, yeah.
So how in the world were they planning to, locate it back then?
Well, even back then, it wasn't easy.
Right.
Finding Howland Island was a huge challenge, even with the assistance of the U.S. Coast Guard cutter, the Itasca. They were stationed nearby, equipped with radio direction finding equipment.
Yeah, wow.
And they even planned to create plumes of smoke
Oh, wow.
to help guide Amelia towards the island.
Wow, so they were really going all out.
Oh, yeah. They pulled out all the stops. But as we know, something went terribly wrong.
Right. Terribly wrong.
And this is where that Naval History Magazine article, I think, presents a very different perspective
Yeah, well, right.
on the events surrounding Amelia's disappearance.
Yeah.
Because, you see, the prevailing theory has always been that Amelia and her navigator, Fred Noonan,
Right.
simply ran out of fuel and crashed somewhere in the Pacific.
Yeah.
But this article suggests something far more complicated.
Really?
It points to, a series of errors, miscommunications, and potential cover-ups
Really?
that call the entire incident into question.
Oh, wow. Okay, so this is getting good. Like, this is where we're sort of, like, venturing into, like, the heart of the mystery.
Exactly. Exactly.
So tell me more. Tell me more. Tell me more. What evidence do they have, like, to support these claims?
So the article focuses heavily on the role of the Itasca,
Okay.
specifically the actions, or maybe in this case inaction, of his captain, Commander Thompson.
Okay.
They highlight, for example, the delayed use of the Itasca's radio beacon signal, which, Amelia was relying on for navigation.
Yeah. I mean, if they had the technology to guide her towards the island, why wouldn't they use it? I mean, that doesn't make sense.
Right, and that's exactly the question the article raises.
Okay.
Because, you see, celestial navigation, which Amelia was also using, was particularly challenging in that part of the Pacific.
Right.
The skies were often cloudy, and even the slightest error in calculation could throw them off course by hundreds of miles.
Oh, wow.
That beacon signal, it was absolutely crucial for them to find that tiny island.
So are you saying that the Itasca had the ability to guide Amelia and Noonan directly to safety, but they didn't use it properly?
That's what the article is suggesting.
Wow. That's a pretty shocking revelation.
It is, and it's just the beginning.
Oh, no. What else?
The article goes on to detail how the search patterns employed by the Itasca
Okay.
in the days following the disappearance
Okay.
were completely illogical
What?
and seemed to ignore crucial areas where the plane could have gone down.
Really?
They even include this visual diagram
Oh, interesting.
in the article showing just how far off track the Itasca was in their search efforts.
Huh.
It's truly baffling.
So are we talking about just like a series of unfortunate mistakes, or is there a possibility of, something a little more deliberate at play here?
Well, that's the question that has fueled decades of speculation, right?
Right.
And numerous theories. And the article doesn't shy away from exploring those possibilities.
This is where things, I think, get really interesting. So you mentioned earlier this term, bogus Howland radio log.
Right.
Can you kind of explain what that means and why it's significant?
Of course. So the Howland radio log, it's a record of all radio communications
Okay.
sent and received on Howland Island during, the time of the disappearance
Okay.
and the subsequent search.
Okay.
It's a crucial piece of evidence, or at least, it should be.
Yeah.
But the article raises serious doubts about its authenticity.
Really?
Yeah, they call it bogus. Because the two men who were actually stationed on Howland Island at the time, they claim they never met the radio operator supposedly in charge, never operated any direction-finding equipment, and never stood watches on Amelia's frequency.
So you're saying the official record of radio communications, like during that critical period, might be totally made up.
That's what they're suggesting.
But why? Like, who would benefit from creating a fake log?
Right. That's the million-dollar question. And the article, explores several possible explanations,
Okay.
all pointing towards a potential cover-up.
A cover-up, really? Like, what are they covering up?
Well, some speculate that Commander Thompson, under immense pressure to find Amelia,
Yeah.
might have falsified the log to hide his own misjudgments
Oh, okay.
and protect the reputation of the Coast Guard.
It's hard to imagine that happening, but at the same time, what you're saying, or what the article's saying, is pretty compelling. Like, it makes you wonder.
Yeah, it does make you wonder. And it gets even more intriguing.
Okay.
When you consider some of the high-level communications that were happening after Amelia's disappearance.
Okay.
For example, the article mentions this recorded phone call
Okay.
where the Secretary of the Treasury, who oversaw the Coast Guard at the time,
Right.
expresses concern that any doubts about the Navy's search efforts
Right.
could anger the president.
Wow. Okay. So even back then, there were concerns about political pressure, protecting reputations, potentially at the expense of uncovering the truth about what happened to Amelia Earhart.
It certainly seems that way, yeah.
It's wild. What a crazy story.
It is a crazy story. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a tale of courage, ambition,
Right.
and the allure, I think, of these unsolved mysteries.
Totally.
Makes you wonder if we'll ever truly know.
Yeah. What happened on that fateful flight?
Right, exactly.
It's just incredible to think that all these years later, Amelia Earhart's story, it still has this power to surprise us, right?
Yeah.
We started with this adventurous spirit, her determination to kind of defy expectations. And now we're left with this possibility that the truth about her disappearance, it might be far more complicated than we ever imagined.
It really is. It reminds us that history is rarely straightforward.
Right.
It's this tapestry woven from all these different perspectives, conflicting accounts, and, you know, often unanswered questions.
Right. And the more we learn about her story, it seems like, the more we realize, like, how much we may never actually know.
That's right.
But even without all the answers, there's no denying the impact Amelia Earhart has had on the world, right?
Absolutely not.
I mean, we talked about her accomplishments in aviation, her role in changing how women were perceived, in the 20th century, but how would you sum up her legacy? Like, what is it about her story that continues to resonate with people, you know, almost a century later?
I think it's multifaceted.
Mm.
I mean, on the one hand, you know, she's a symbol of courage
Yeah.
and determination.
Mm.
A woman who dared to chase her dreams,
No.
and break down these barriers at a time when, it was almost unthinkable. I mean, she showed the world, maybe even more importantly, she showed other women that they could also push boundaries and achieve, they're
Like,
extraordinary.
she did it all with such style. Like, it's that iconic leather jacket,
Uh,
the short hair, that infectious smile. Like,
yeah.
she was just such an original. I totally get why she's still so admired and emulated today.
Right. And she wasn't afraid to be herself.
Yeah.
To challenge these conventions both in her personal and professional life, and I think that really resonated with people.
Yeah, I think so too.
Because she wasn't just this skilled pilot, right? But she was a role model, someone who inspired others to live life on their own terms.
Yeah. It's interesting to consider how her legacy has maybe even evolved over time.
Yeah.
It's almost like her disappearance, as tragic as it was, it allowed her to become this even more, I don't know, like, potent symbol of something much larger than herself.
It's true, yeah. She's become this almost mythical figure,
Yeah.
right? Representing the spirit of adventure,
Yeah.
the pursuit of excellence, and I think that enduring power of the human spirit to just, push beyond those limitations.
Totally. And even if we never find the Electra, if we never, find out every single detail about her disappearance,
Right.
I mean, Amelia Earhart's impact on the world, it's undeniable.
Absolutely.
What a story, right? I mean, we might not have all the answers, but I love how Amelia Earhart's story, it encourages us to keep asking those questions, to challenge those assumptions,
Yeah.
and to never stop exploring the unknown. And she reminds us that sometimes those greatest journeys, they're the ones that leave us with more questions than answers.
That's true.
That's the beauty of a good deep dive, right?
It is.
We might start with one little topic, but along the way, we're uncovering these new perspectives. We're finding these intriguing little details and these thought-provoking questions. And they kind of stay with us long after the episode ends. So listeners, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into the subjects that fascinate you. Because you never know what you might discover.